so this is the wretched part that happens next. God's Plan by Drake kept playing all day. Everywhere we went, at the airport, God's Plan was playing. In the car, God's Plan was playing. After he proposed, God's Plan was playing. And so I'm like, maybe God was trying to send me a sign through Drake.
Drake coming through with the
right. Drake prophesied.
And so I'm not just
The curl gods are in your favor. Hey y'all, the lesson for today. The lesson for today is do not.
And then you mentioned in your intro that you are in the public health field and also an entrepreneur. So are you doing like the full-time job and your like passion related business on the side?
Yes, so my full-time job is in public health. Hopefully, one day I can quit my full-time job and go completely working for myself. Okay. But my passion is women. All things women, reproductive health, teen pregnancy prevention, women's empowerment, anything like that. Okay. I just love it. So I try to balance the two. I pretty much do entrepreneurship half the time, part-time, and then public health full-time.
Okay. Yeah, that's super encouraging to me, because when I first started to just get more serious about my social media platform and ways that I wanted to do ministry via this outlet and all of that, you know, you always get the questions about like, so do you eventually want to do that full time? And I'm like looking at these people who have quit their full-time jobs to start businesses and all that. And I'm like, I ain't really feeling that. Like my corporate job is what allows me to be able to. And so,
that's not everybody's story.
Exactly. So I ran into this girl that was like, I mean, I quit my job, but I could go live home with my mama. Like, stop thinking that you got to quit your job to do this. And so now I've been kind of balancing it. And it's been cool too, because growing up and kind of having this passion for doing women's ministry, I always thought that it had to look like the church, you know, like leading a church or marrying a pastor or leading a small group, you know, like typical, like I want to do ministry. And so when God placed this platform on my heart and the desire continued to grow and grow and grow, one day I woke up like, wait, I'm doing ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think it has to look like this concrete, you know, way of doing things. Right. So I was just super encouraged by that. So I'm encouraged to hear and see you as well, kind of like balancing the best of both worlds. I think that's awesome. Right. Mm-hmm. So one more question that I have before we dive into kind of the dating story. So all of the guys that came along the way, was it really just like a process of elimination? Like eventually they showed the true colors, so you know this ain't really it? Or did you have some guys that like you were hopeful about and for some reason it fell off? What was the process of elimination, you know, as you're trying to be intentional but being presented with different options?
Well, so some of them eliminated themselves. Some of them were good guys. Like to this day, we don't talk or anything, but I think they will make awesome husbands for somebody. Okay. But a lot of them basically eliminated themselves. And it's crazy because when I think back, most of them, I was the one that broke up with them. Mm-hmm. Because it got to a point where I just decided to choose me. Mm-hmm. I remember I was engaged previously, actually, in college. And I mean, he was the love of my life. Like, I thought this was my husband. I was close to his family. We did everything together. But he was a cheater. And he played semi-pro baseball. And I remember him looking at me and saying, you know, I love you, but I'm going to have sex with other women. So, you know, that's just what I do because I play baseball. And you just need to accept it. I was just like, okay, you know. So I said okay at the time, but like I went back home and I just thought about it. So everything replayed in my mind. Like, okay, so next time I found out he cheats, what can I say? Because he already told me who he was. Like, that was like my first time really, you know, choosing myself other than when I left my kid's dad. And so I was just like, you know what, I can't do this. So I called him and I'm just like, you know, if you're going to be with other women, then I'm going to choose me. And his response told me immediately, like, he wasn't the one. Even if I thought I was making a mistake, he said, you'll never meet another man who's going to love you and your kid and have a good life. And so I said, okay. Like, at the time, I just feel like, you know what, I'm fine with that. If I never meet anybody who's going to love me and my kids, as long as I don't stay with you. And so I left. But yeah, everybody else, it was just like God was saying no. Even when I thought things were going good, it was just God saying, okay, he's nice, but he's not the one. Something would always happen. And so they just kind of eliminated themselves. But the important thing was that I listened to their voice, you know, instead of doubting myself. Because on paper, some of them were really great. Like, they had the job, the cars.
Let go. You like,
yes.
You can just get more spiritual. This could really work.
Right.
You just love the Lord a little more. This could work.
Yeah. I mean, I had great, and I want a lot of women to like realize that some of my options were great. I had people flying me in helicopters over Martha's Vineyard. People who, when I was with them, I didn't have to touch a doorknob. They would fly me out, but they couldn't cover me. They, you know, they just weren't the one. So, yeah, I just listened to God.
Yeah, I have two similar stories. Like my college relationship ended similarly in terms of as I was starting to come into deeper convictions and trying to go closer to God. And at first I would be wavering, like, we shouldn't be having sex, and then I end up back in his bed. We shouldn't be having sex. So when I finally made up my mind, he was like, I admire the decision that you're making. I'm not making that decision. That is not where I'm at. But I'm cool. He's like, if you would have never opened this door, we might be good. But the door hasn't been open. And I was like, you know what? I can respect that. You know, you put your cards on the table. And so now I make a decision, you know, do I still want to be with you or not? And so that did that. And then similar to you, once I like truly repented and gave my life to Christ, I had to make it clear with kind of all of the men that were in my life who were a possibility where it was not going, you know?
Right.
And one of those guys said to me, like, you actually think somebody gonna marry you without having sex with you first? Like, you actually think he gonna find, ooh, good luck. You know? And I'm like, well, any option is better than you. So let's just like, you were never any good to me to begin with. So it's wild that they like put this whole stamp on your future out of kind of your pride. That's funny.
So crazy.
So you finally respond to the man.
Finally.
Pursuing you, right?
Right.
I read in one of your posts that within like 12 hours or something like that, y'all decided like, okay, this is gonna be a thing. So tell us about that.
Okay, so I finally responded and we talked through the DM for months, and then we exchanged numbers and we would talk off and on every day. And so he works for the airline, so he said, I want to fly out to take you on a date. Been there, done that. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But I told him he could. We picked a date, but before everything was set in stone, I prayed about it. And I'm like, God, I'm tired of, dating people for 2-3 years and it being over. Like, I'm tired of grieving relationships. So if he isn't the one, I don't even want to go on a date with him. So great. Everything seemed to be going right. The morning of the date, he calls me and says, the plane is having mechanical issues. So I pretend like I'm disappointed, but deep down I'm like, okay, whew, thank God.
Didn't waste no time. Cool.
Right. I'm not in my feelings. I'm not attached. Whatever. He calls 30 minutes later and says, everything is good. I'll see you at 9:30. So I'm like, okay. I'm still not thinking anything serious. But when I got to the airport and I saw him in person, it was as if I had known this man all of my life. I wasn't nervous. It was like, I really can't even explain it. It was just like I was seeing an old friend. And so we spent the whole day together. I'm obsessed with animals, even though I'm scared of them. But we went to like a drive-through safari park. So we did like a mini road trip. It was perfect. And that night we went to dinner. He introduced me to the person who actually married us. Okay. At the time, she was just a friend. And he just looked at me after the date and he was just like, I think we should talk about courtship. And so no man had ever even used the word courtship. What is courtship, you know? So I said, okay.
Already cut from a different cloth.
Right. So I just had so much peace and we just made it official. We were just like, okay, let's do it. You know, we didn't make it Facebook official. We just wanted to kind of bask in it for a minute. Yeah. And everything after that is history. And here we are.
Yeah. So y'all dated long distance? What was that like?
Yes. So at the terrible. So at the time, I'm just being honest. At the time, he was in North Carolina and I was in Memphis, which isn't that far, but maybe 8-7 weeks into our relationship, he calls and says, I'm moving to Oregon.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm just like, the relationship was new, so I didn't think that I could express my opinion. So I didn't. He moves to Oregon. It was the worst 8 months of our life. It was terrible. The people treated him terrible. I had to sacrifice and travel back and forth maybe once a month. We argued a lot. But it was just always something that told me like, this, you know, this is your husband. But I never told him that. So I'm just like, okay, like, God, if this is my husband, then you don't have to work it out because this seems crazy. I have 2 kids. I'm not moving my kids to Oregon. And so.
Oregon, of all the places.
Right, of all places. Right, so he moved from Oregon to Phoenix. So that was better, you know. So we started to go from, he was in Phoenix maybe 3 months. Then one day I was at work and he calls me and says, hey, I'm moving to Memphis. And I'm like, you're moving to Memphis when? He was like, I'm on my way. Yeah, and so he FaceTimed me and I see all of his belongings packed in the back seat. Right. And so I'm like, did you get a job here or something? And he was like, no, like God just told me to move to Memphis. So I'm like, okay. And I pray about it. And I just heard God say, like, I'm going to work it out. Mm-hmm. He comes here. I don't believe in shacking up. I don't judge anybody who does, but you weren't going to live with me. And I think a lot, for me, that wasn't even just based off of Bible. It was my experience with having a stepdad live with me and how traumatic that experience was. So I didn't want to move a man in with my kids if he wasn't my husband. So he lived in an Airbnb for maybe 3 months, and then he started to rent out houses. He lived in a hotel for like 2 weeks. Like, he did everything he needed to do to make sure he lived in Memphis.
Yeah.
And so 2 years was coming up. Our 2-year anniversary was coming up. And it's crazy because on our first day, I told him, I will give you 2 years of my life. And if we're not engaged or married, then I don't want to waste my time. And it wasn't that I was trying to force marriage, but it was because I had already been through 2 years with so many other people.
Right.
That I didn't want to waste time. So 2-year anniversary came around. Nothing happened. Right. So I'm like, okay, guy.
Hello.
Right. So I can't even tell you what we did on our 2-year anniversary, but we didn't get engaged. So December comes around, and he was working for the airline again. And so we travel a lot. So randomly he said, let's go to California to visit our friends. So we have a mutual friends who are a couple.
Okay.
So I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we go to California, we see our friends, and it's so crazy because everybody who knew we were going to California said, girl, he gonna propose. You gonna come back engaged? And me being me, I'm like, girl, please. Like, right. This man is not proposing to me, blah, blah, blah. We had been arguing for like 2 days. So we go to church. It was just a great random day. We go to church. We go to lunch with our friends. Our friends get lost. Then we go to the beach. And I was feeling very happy. So we're like slow dancing on the beach, talking about our future. And I pull out my camera. And I'm like, I'm going to record this moment. So next time we argue, you can look at this and remember why you love me. You know, just being silly. So I'm like, while I have you on camera, do you think we'll be married this time next year, which would be now?
No pressure. Like, no pressure.
Right.
Have you on camera.
Right. I'm going to put you on camera, but no pressure. So I'm like, do you think you're proposed to me by December 2020? And he was like, yeah, you know how men are, yeah, whatever. So I'm like, okay. I start to put the camera up, and he says, keep the camera out. So I'm like, okay. Still not thinking anything of it. He gets on his knee and proposes. Like, he's like, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You make me so happy. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I was in so much shock because, first of all, I had talked so much crap before. I just knew, like, this man is not proposing to me. Like, yes. It was a ring that I had on Pinterest. You know how you save rings on your Pinterest board? Just dreaming. I mean, everything was perfect to the point where when he asked, I didn't say anything. And I'm just like, boy, are you for real? Right. I'm like, are you for real? He's like, yeah. So this is the wretched part that happens next. God's Plan by Drake kept playing all day. Everywhere we went, at the airport, God's Plan was playing. In the car, God's Plan was playing. After he proposed, God's Plan was playing. And so I'm like, maybe God was trying to send me a sign through Drake.
Drake coming through with the
prophecy. Right. Drake prophesied. So yeah, like December 15th, 2019, he finally proposed, and it was everything that I dreamed of.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, so how long have y'all been married now?
We have been married 6 weeks.
Wow. So y'all are like
Yeah.
fresh in this like adjusting life.
Yes. We are very new to
Yeah.
our blended family.
Right. What was it like trying to figure out when to introduce him to your kids?
You know what? I want to say I introduced them maybe a year in.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that I was sure about him. I knew I thought I heard from God, but sometimes we doubt ourselves.
Right.
And I didn't want to introduce them to anybody only for them to not be in our lives for the long run.
Right.
So I prayed about it and I was comfortable introducing them maybe a year in.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. And so now this whole new journey starts. You're like,
I
all
know.
right, now we're here. All right,
Right.
here we go. Yeah, that's so exciting. I definitely think that your story is so stinking inspiring.
Thank you.
It Man, it's the story of so many, in so
Mhm.
many different aspects, and that whole point of like, I'm just done with the games,
Right.
what it's gonna be. I'd rather do that than
Right.
continue on and just like having somebody close just to say that they're here.
Just to say you have somebody, right?
Yeah. So the question that I always like to wrap up with is, what would you tell the girls like you? So whether those are women who feel like they're orphans for different reasons, women who got pregnant as teenagers, single moms, those that may still be in that phase of being in and out of relationships, or those that are, feel like they're pretty content and living life, but still have that desire to be married that they're waiting to be fulfilled. What would be your advice to them?
My advice to them would just be to listen to God. One of my favorite quotes is, "Your wounds tell a great story, but they're not your identity." I mean, like, the stuff that we've been through may be ugly. You may think that God can't use you or bring somebody in your life that loves you. You may think that you're not good enough. Maybe you don't have the education, the experience, whatever. But what you've been through and what you don't have is not your identity.
Yes, I love that so much. And personally, I love it because I went through a divorce this year, after kind of like having done it God's way and married in the church and all of that kind of thing. And so one of the things that I really struggled with was like, well, dang, like damaged goods, just feeling like,
Yeah.
okay, I've done it the quote unquote right way. And, there's all these aspirations that I had of the prize that I wanted to feel like that I was giving my husband. And so it was one thing to like, repent, be baptized. And once I was getting married, okay, I'm made new. And now I'm like,
Right.
be made new again, like whatever, just like, what the heck? And so having to backtrack and realize that like all of the things that I felt like made me a prize were never biblical.
Right.
Those are never things that God looked at and valued as part of my worth. And so now I pray so much for my future husband in the aspect of like, I want to feel God's love so much through the way that he's able to accept me and
Right.
history and flaws and all. So I just love that quote so much. It's amazing. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so stinking much.
Thank
This
you.
was so powerful. I also wanted to ask you, what's the name of your book?
The name of my book is, I don't know if you can see it, Glam, Grace, and Mercy.
I love it.
I can send you my website. The website is enameledingrace.com.
That'd be awesome.
So, yeah, if anybody wants to read it, they can pick up a copy. It's really good, but Part 2 will be coming soon.
I have to. Awesome. And then, are you on social media outside of Facebook?
Yes. So I'm on social. I'm on Instagram under Admire My Glamour One.
Okay.
I would change it, but it's tied to so many other things. It's such a childish name.
But she's like, it's tied to so much. We gotta
Right. And of course, Facebook. And where is it? My business page on Instagram is Shop Enameled in Grace.
Okay.
One.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be sure to include all of those details. So thank you again so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. And
Thank you.
I'm already thinking about friends that I'm like, sis gonna bless.